Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Carving It Up Live right here on Twitter, as well as the Carving It Up YouTube channel and the Grid Network YouTube channel. As always, I am Bryson Carver. Very excited to be with you on this Friday night. Last Friday before the NFL playoffs, which kicks off tomorrow. I cannot wait. Got 2 games tomorrow, 3 on Sunday and 1 on Monday. Now, the Monday nighter, Philadelphia, Tampa Bay. I will not predict that game until at the end of Monday's show. I'm going to focus really on the 5 games prior to that, the 2 Saturday and the 3 on Sunday. Very, very exciting stuff. Obviously, my playoff predictions for the wild card round at the end of today's show, about an hour and 15 minutes from now. A segment that I was going to do yesterday, but ended up not doing because of the Nick Saban retirement news coming in right before the show started. NFL playoff weaknesses. This is the 3rd year in a row that we've done this, where it's what's the biggest weakness? What's the reason, if I can frame it this way, that all 14 teams in the playoffs won't win the Super Bowl? Obviously, somebody's going to win it in the end, so I'll obviously be dead wrong on one of those. But for the other 13, what's the biggest reason they won't win the Super Bowl? What's their biggest weaknesses? I think the last couple of years, I think my first year, I was darn near spot on. I went like 10 for 14. And then last year, more like 8 or 9 for 14. Or, sorry, 10 for 13, 8 or 9 for 13 last year. So hoping I can go 13 for 13 this year, see what happens. But playoff weaknesses, an hour from now at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific time. Jason Whitlock, Stephen A. Smith. This is the 2024, man, is the year of feuds and beefs. You got the Cat Williams interview. You got the Stephen A. Smith going off on Jason Whitlock. More on that in an hour and a half. I'm sorry, hour and a half. More on that in a half hour. And my reaction to what Mr. Smith had to say about Mr. Whitlock and why the Philadelphia Eagles need to seriously consider moving on from Nick Sirianni. And I mean seriously, if and only if they lose to Tampa Bay and Alabama hiring Kalen DeBoer. Sucks as a Tennessee fan. Good for Kalen, good for Alabama. Sucks as a Tennessee fan. But first, the greatest defensive coach in the history of football and the team that he won the majority of his Super Bowls with, because he's got 2 with the Giants, Bill Belichick and the Patriots have parted ways after 24 seasons together. Bill Belichick, again, 6 Super Bowl titles as the head coach of the Patriots. Won a multitude of divisional titles, went to another 3 Super Bowls along with the 6 that he won in New England. Again, he has the 2 Super Bowl appearances with the Giants as their defensive coordinator under Parcells. And simply put, again, is the greatest defensive coach to ever walk this earth or in the NFL's grounds. You talk about a guy who's able to slow down the great Buffalo Bills offense in the early 1990s, so much so that his game plan was literally put in the Hall of Fame. You talk about a Bill Belichick who his first Super Bowl with the New England Patriots faced the greatest show on turf and held them to 17 points. And his defense ended up also getting a pick 6 in that game. Shout out to Ty Law. He also, his last Super Bowl, also against this now, the Los Angeles Rams, high-scoring team in the league, or high-scoring Sean McVay team, and he's had some high-scoring teams in the past, held him to a field goal. So he's the greatest defensive coach in the history of the National Football League. Many argue he's the GOAT coach. More on that in just a second. I don't subscribe to that theory. Again, more on that in just a moment. But to take into account what this Patriots dynasty had been, and obviously, listen, the dynasty ended the day Tom Brady walked out that door in 2020, early 2020, and went to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Ended that day, said it the day it happened, and that obviously remained to be true. The Patriots have been to the playoffs 1 time in the last 4 years, and in that playoff game, they lost by 30. So the dynasty ended at that point. But this was a dynasty that was founded on what the NFL was great at the time, or what made you great in the NFL at that time. If you could be kind of an underdog team, which the Patriots were at that point, which was game managing quarterback who didn't make mistakes and play great defense. And that's kind of what the Patriots were, certainly in their first Super Bowl against the Los Angeles Rams. And you could argue in their 3rd Super Bowl when they beat the Philadelphia Eagles. That second one, Tom was phenomenal against the Carolina Panthers. And then around 2007, Randy Moss comes in the building. Tom ascends into the best or second best quarterback. Obviously, he went back and forth with Peyton Manning at that point in the league. 50 touchdown passes, MVP. Patriots almost went undefeated. Then you have the gap, again, between 2004 and 2014 of 2 Super Bowl appearances, both losses to Eli Manning and the Giants, but no titles in that span. And at that point, it looks like, hey, dynasty might be kind of over. But then the resurgence in 2014, everybody talks about in that game with the New England played Seattle about how, oh my God, the Seahawks should have run it for the 1. And obviously we all know they should have. But we often forget that the pass play was perfectly executed by Seattle. It's just the Patriots executed a little bit better. This undrafted rookie out of West Alabama, Malcolm Butler, remember that name? Watch this documentary short documentary really, called Do Your Job, which was Bill's moniker in New England. And Bill and the Patriots coaches, Brian Flores, who was on that Patriots staff, they coached Malcolm to be ready for that play. Won him a Super Bowl. Won a couple more after that. The comeback against Atlanta, the win against the Rams, in which the Belichick-led Patriots defense held Los Angeles to a single field goal in that game. But part of the story with Belichick is this as well, is that, number one, or really, it's really threefold. Number one, the scandals. Spygate, one pretty darn serious in 2007, in 2006, 2007, spying on Eric Mangini, who was a former assistant with the Patriots and the New York Jets. Then you had the second Spygate, which happened Brady's last year when they were, I remember talking about this on the show at the time, oddly spying on the Cincinnati Bengals, who were the worst team in the league that year, but spying on Cincinnati. And I remember the tape came out about the NFL reviewing that, and there were some Patriot staffers saying, like, we can delete it, blah, blah, blah. And some NFL exec you could hear in the background say, hey, damage is done now. So you had some shady stuff. I'm not even going to include Deflategate. It's the biggest sham of a scandal that has ever been instituted, because of the simple fact that the Colts got the doors blown off them 45-7 in the 2014 AFC title game. Some disgruntled linebacker, went to the league, said the ball was more deflated than it should have been, just conveniently leaving out the fact that in cold weather, and this is proven, and this is just a scientific fact, footballs get deflated. I mean, we've seen high school students do tests on this. High schoolers. You're telling me the NFL could have done something about this, but there was something against Brady and Belichick, and we can go into that another show another day. You have that component. So the scandals do matter. Deflategate's a bunch of nonsense, but Spygate, not great for Bill's legacy or for the Patriots' legacy as a whole. The second thing is that Belichick without Brady, and we can even go back to his days with the Cleveland Browns, in which, yes, he got to the playoffs. Browns actually won a playoff game in the early 90s, but they never, ever ascended to heights that Belichick did with the New England Patriots. Belichick without Brady, not the same coach. Without Tom Brady in his career, Mr. Belichick had a record of 83-104. He was 21 games below 500. Without Tom in New England, he was 29-39, 10 games below 500. You say, well, Bryson, it's not entirely fair. First of all, he's the greatest quarterback ever. Anything else is a downgrade. And second of all, I mean, you got to have a great quarterback in order to be successful. Not if you are a greater coach, at least in the offensive side of the ball. Andy Reid went to 5 NFC championship games with Donovan McNabb. Good quarterback, Alex Smith level quarterback, who Andy Reid made the playoffs time and time again with, won division titles with. But it wasn't until Andy Reid got Patrick Mahomes that he ascended to new heights. It's natural for Belichick to not be quite as successful without the GOAT. Nobody's going to kill him for that. But it was not even close. That's where the debate about, hey, who was more important, it kind of permanently shifted into Brady's favor. Now, the good news, before we move on to the final sort of downside of Belichick's legacy, the good news for Bill is that he seems interested in coaching still. I mean, he's like, all the reports coming out of New England, Belichick alluded to himself in the press conference yesterday, like, I'm not done coaching. Bill's only 71 years old. Pete Carroll was essentially removed from his job as the Seahawks head coach. Pete Carroll seems to want to coach. Belichick does as well. So is there a job available that could amuse him? I'll talk more about that a little later in the show with another coach who's on the hot seat going to the playoffs this weekend. We'll see. But you have that component onto it as well. Bill can obviously pass Don Shula's all-time head coach record, which he's 15 wins behind. So a couple seasons with a ready-made Super Bowl contending team, he'll pass Shula. And then the last component is this, and I think this, to me, more than the scandals, more than the lack of success without Brady, is kind of the biggest downside of Bill's legacy. He didn't adapt. The game passed him by. Remember I was talking about Nick Saban on Wednesday's show. Part of the thing that ascends Nick Saban to undeniably the greatest college football coach of all time is that when Saban came in, that first national title came in 07. They won their first national title in the 2009 season. At that point, it was a ground and pound, Mark Ingram, run the football team, great O-lines, and great defenses. And then around the mid-2010s, it's like, no, you need Jalen Hurts, and you need Tua, and you need Mac Jones. I could barely get that out of my mouth. With great receivers, and you need Bryce Young, Heisman Trophy winner. You need dynamic playmakers at quarterback. It's the same in the National Football League. Nick adjusted. His buddy Bill did not. He tried the Cam Newton experiment. Even before the Cam Newton experiment, when Tom Brady left, up until late June, I think Cam Newton might have signed on like my birthday that year. So it was like late June. You know, their plan was Jarrett Stidham, who's a backup quarterback in the NFL. Solid backup, but an obvious backup. That was their backup plan to replace the GOAT. Then they tried the Cam thing. That didn't work. And then they drafted Mac Jones out of Alabama, who, this is not revisionist history. I said coming into that draft, you can go back and check the tape from early 2021. I said I drafted him in the 3rd round, no higher. He is not an NFL starting quarterback. He's immobile, noodle arm, and as we came to find out, not the greatest leader and wasn't terribly receptive to coaching. But Belichick stuck with Mac, had a good rookie year, but finished pretty bad. Year 2, it was even worse, and Belichick, in defense of Mac, employed Matt Patricia, a defensive guy, to call the offensive plays. And then this year was the low point. The Patriots only won 4 games. Mac Jones was benched, and they had to roll with Bailey Zappi to the end of the year. New England seemingly didn't make an attempt to replace Tom, to get a dynamic player at the quarterback position. And even in terms of finding talent, Belichick wasn't very good at that either. As the de facto general manager of the Patriots, if you go back to 2012, yeah, it's the last time New England drafted a Pro Bowler in the 1st round. That was Dante Hightower, who had a very successful career with the Patriots. Every other year, 1st round, did not draft a Pro Bowler. Mac Jones was a Pro Bowl replacement, but come on. Like, what are we doing? Had some questionable drafts. I remember last year was odd. He drafted multiple guards and kickers. It was just weird. It was time to move on. Props to Robert Kraft, who saw through this. Robert Kraft is one of those owners, like, he's a competitive dude. He's not going to be one of these owners that just collects his check, doesn't care how the team does. No. Bob Kraft isn't going to sit idly by, watch his team be run into the ground and not do anything about it. It was time. Belichick had a phenomenal run. He's the greatest defensive coach of all time. I put guys like Bill Walsh over. I think Bill Walsh is the greatest coach ever. He literally changed offense. His offensive scheme, the West Coast system, is used to this day, decades later. But would I hire Bill Belichick with a Super Bowl ready roster that he doesn't have to handpick or draft with a great quarterback? Absolutely. If I didn't want to go after Jim Harbaugh or Mike Vrabel, then I'd probably go to Belichick. So my guess is this is not the last time we'll see Bill in the NFL. That's a good thing. There's a lot of teams out there with great quarterbacks and terrible defenses that he fit perfectly. Only time will tell where he goes. All I'll say is this, as a little teaser a half hour from now, there's a team that's in the playoffs right now that I think Bill would be a marvelous fit for. But shout out to Bill Belichick. Phenomenal career in New England. Deserves all the love and adoration he's gotten and will get. But we do also have to, this isn't carving up the context, but we do also have to provide some context into the downsides of the Belichick run, which there are not many, but there are some, and they are significant. Nonetheless, hats off to Bill Belichick. Heck of a run. Let's see. My man Patrick Brown's in the comments. Playoff chaos is here. Let's go. Indeed, Patrick Brown. Again, end of the show, I'll do my playoff predictions. I'm not predicting Buccaneers-Eagles, or really Eagles-Buccaneers, because that game's on Monday Night Football. It's the 3rd year in a row that ESPN and the NFL have done a Monday night playoff game. So save that for the end of the show, or save that for Monday's show. Focus on the 5 this weekend. We've got some good ones. This is one of the best wild card weekends that I can remember. I mean, there's a potential you could have 1, maybe 2 blowouts. Other than that, man, that Lions-Rams game, that of the 5 games I'm predicting on today's show, that's the one I spent the most time on being like, I don't know what to do here. Like, it's go either way. There's a reason the Lions are favored by a field goal at home. Like, it is a go either way, neutral site. Who the heck knows who would win a game between those two on a neutral site field? Listen, I think the Rams have the better quarterback and coach, but I think Detroit has the better skill position guys. They're at home. They're a great team at home. They got momentum. So do the Rams, though. That's the game I'm looking forward to the most. Like, even with my Steelers against Buffalo in terrible weather, even with my guy Dak Prescott against the Packers, who I hate, even those games, even including those games, Rams-Lions is a good one. That's the one I'm looking forward to the most. Stafford coming back to Detroit. Are you kidding me? Goff versus McVay. We know their relationship kind of deteriorated at the end. Man, you could have some wonky Dan Campbell calls at some point in the game. Cannot wait. Cannot wait. It's gonna be a fun one, no question. But I'll predict those games at the end of the show. I guess I'll go and talk about it now and get it over with. I don't want to say get it over with because it's certainly interesting. 2024 has seemingly been the year of I guess you could say folks getting exposed to a certain degree. The Cat Williams interview with Shannon Sharp, second most watched podcast interview ever, at least last time I checked the numbers. You've got everybody's all this Epstein list and oh my God, who's on the island, blah, blah, blah. And then you have, I guess the one that shocked me the least, generally speaking, is Stephen A. Smith, the face of the worldwide leader in sports, ESPN, going hard after one Jason Whitlock, who is at ESPN, then at FS1, then at Outkick, and now he's with something I believe called The Blaze. So I'm not going to play. Listen, we, to a certain extent on Carving It Up, pride ourselves on this being a family-friendly show to a certain extent. I mean, there might be if I play a clip, there might be a cuss word here or there, but it's nothing like crazy. But by and large, it's a family-friendly show, which is why not playing a single one of the clips from what Stephen A. said. I will read one of the quotes that, in general, in the around 45 minutes he talked about Jason Whitlock the other day on his podcast, I will read a quote that kind of just sums it up. Stephen A., from his show, the Stephen A. Smith show, said, quote, "I mean it from my soul when I say this is the worst human being I've ever known. I don't know of another human being worse than Jason Whitlock. He's a piece of blank. He's the dude that's going to have a funeral and ain't going to be no pallbearers." That's about the worst thing you can say about a human being, is that no pallbearers at their funeral. Where do I start? So I obviously do not know Jason Whitlock. I have a good enough understanding of his standing among folks in the media, and I have a good enough understanding to know that a lot of the things that Stephen A. Smith are confirmed factually, in the sense that Stephen A. talked about how when ESPN tabbed Whitlock, when he was at ESPN, to run a black-run journalist conglomerate, so to speak, with ESPN called The Undefeated, that nobody wanted to work for him. Nobody wanted to work for Jason Whitlock. Matter of fact, one individual, if I could pull this quote up because it is noteworthy. Where is it? It is from, yes, Gregory Hampton Lee Jr., who's a senior editor for Front Office Sports, wrote, he, meaning Jason Whitlock, interviewed me for The Undefeated, and it was the worst experience, end quote. So Stephen A. has backing on this from folks who interviewed with Whitlock and didn't want to be a part of The Undefeated. So essentially, ESPN moved on from Whitlock. Undefeated turned into something else. I forget what it's called now, with ESPN, with black journalists talking about sports, culture, etc. And he went to FS1. And he was on, I remember he was on that show. He was one of him and Colin Cowherd did that Speak for Yourself show, which is now Speak with Emmanuel Acho, Joy Taylor, etc. And it was those two that have different contributors coming on. And it's a nice way of putting it. Jason developed a reputation as quite a controversial figure in many respects not related to professional sports. So 2020, his contract expired. FS1 did not renew it. And so he went to Outkick Sports. Now, those of you who don't know, Outkick was founded by Clay Travis. And Clay Travis is probably, at least in my estimation, the second most notable conservative talk show host in America. I'd say Sean Hannity's probably at the top because Hannity's been doing a show for a long time. He replaced, Clay did, Rush Limbaugh, the late Rush Limbaugh, who had a show for a very long time, conservative talk radio. Regardless of how you feel about Clay Travis's political beliefs, he moved on from Jason Whitlock. despite them being in very similar political ideologies. And even Clay Travis is like, no, let's just go ahead and let's move on from this. And now he's at the Blaze. He's got his own show, Fearless. Not really sure what that's supposed to mean, but by and large, that's what you're getting at. What Jason Whitlock has done is create a lane that is... There are other individuals who've went similar routes that he has. Some, you know who I'm referring to. I will not be getting into today. But Jason Whitlock has taken advantage of an audience in this country that is not conservative. Not saying they're not conservative. I'm saying the by and large conservatives, your average everyday conservatives, do not subscribe to what Jason Whitlock says on an everyday basis. Jason Whitlock's platform is not for conservatives. It's for white supremacists. I'm just going to say it right now. It's for white supremacists. Because oftentimes you'll have folks who, there's code words, there's dog whistling calls, so to speak, about, that's one of the good ones. You ever heard a white person say that about somebody who's not of their particular race and skin color? One of the good ones. They would refer to Jason Whitlock as that because he caters and he validates to a certain degree their prejudice, their messed up beliefs. That's what he's done. And this notion, I've seen him respond saying that Stephen A has, he's wrong about what I've said and what I've prided myself on being, just because he was using inappropriate language or profanity, a profanity-laced tirade, so to speak, and that it proves me right. That he's this emotional, whatever. Okay, just because a guy got fired up because you said that he didn't write his own book does not mean he is incorrect. And frankly, I'd probably feel the same. If I wrote a book, New York Times bestseller, Stephen A's book did, I've read it. It's phenomenal. Obviously, he wrote it, as Jason Whitlock says he does not. And he had an issue with Stephen A's response. Well, Stephen A has, by the way, also been backed up by individuals such as Jamel Hill, formerly of ESPN, Stan Verrett, as well, who's in Sports Center. So he's got backing in this regard. When we talk about individuals who, how do I put this? Of course, we look for in media. I'm pursuing a career in media. I've been unapologetic about that. A big thing is obviously, of course, you're in it for yourself in the sense that you're trying to make a career. We all are. Who isn't? But looking out for others, Jason Whitlock simply has not done that. And one thing for me personally, because I can't feel the weight, because I'm not black, obviously, I can't feel the weight of an individual constantly, unapologetically trashing my race the way that black people can with what Jason Whitlock says on a daily basis on his show. What I can do is this. Jason Whitlock, and forgive me if this is going maybe too deep, or people may not subscribe to my particular beliefs in this regard, but just hear me out. Jason Whitlock is an individual who professes himself to be a Christian. So do I. Something that bothers me about him is something that bothers me. Again, this is a way deeper issue that I could spend an entire show talking about. It's a deep issue within parts of the church, with pastors out there who present this holier-than-thou persona, that there's one way to do certain thing. Now, again, the Bible is very clear on what is right, what is wrong, so to speak, of course. But Christianity in and of itself is a faith that is founded completely upon the ideas and values of grace, redemption, and what's the other word I'm looking for? I was thinking about this earlier. Repentance. That's what I was looking for. Repentance. I messed up. Please forgive me. I will be better. Now, we can go to a deeper sense if anyone wants to have a conversation with me regarding deeper tenets and values of Christianity, but that's in essence what it is, what Jesus Christ taught. Jason Whitlock is a guy who tries to promote this holier than thou. He's oftentimes criticized Christian athletes in the past, such as Steph Curry, guys like that, and questioned their faiths because they had the audacity to endorse a Democrat. Regardless of what your viewpoints are politically, I'm a political independent. To criticize someone's faith simply because they endorse a particular party, I have questions about your own faith, to be completely honest with you. Whitlock does that essentially on a daily basis, along with trashing black people and the African American community on a daily basis. So am I with Stephen A? Doggone right, I'm with Stephen A. And most people are. Most people either know Whitlock, know of Whitlock. The response from him, from the very few individuals who back him, tells us all we need to know. I don't think there's a single lie what Stephen A's told in that piece. Or I'm sorry, in that podcast. Regardless of where you lean politically, I have absolutely nothing against conservatives, liberals, etc. I have friends who are liberals. I have friends who are conservatives. To me, that's what makes America great. I have no friends who are white supremacists. And Jason Whitlock is a guy who caters to that group more than just about anybody I've ever seen that isn't white. Other individuals would fit into that category, again, those of which I will not name today, but that's who he is. Totally with Stephen A. 100% with Stephen A. I don't know. I feel like I needed to talk about that because it's been something. Listen, if I did a comedy show, I would have spent probably an entire show talking about this Cat Williams interview with Shannon Sharp. But this is sports media. This is somebody who's two individuals who are in sports media, one in the sports political landscape-ish venue of the media. Stephen A. has delved into politics on countless occasions. He's interviewed politicians on his show many times, political pundits, etc. So this is something that props to Stephen A. for saying what he said. I'll leave it at that. If we could shift back to sports again, I've last thing quickly, and then I'll move on to Nick Sirianni. Like this whole stick to sports, shut up and dribble. We heard Laura Ingraham say that years ago to LeBron James and Kevin Durant. This whole stick to sports nonsense, first of all, that's been dead for a long time. And the fact of the matter is I understand my audience comes to my show to hear me talk about sports, and 95% of the time that's the case. The rest of my show is going to be spent on football, college, and NFL, and Monday's show is going to be all football, maybe a mix of basketball. Who knows what happens over the weekend. But, certain topics go way beyond the world of sports, and if there's individuals who are involved in sports and major political issues, then I think I have every right to speak on it, as you do, as every American does, because we all have the blessing and the privilege of having the good old First Amendment. Wish that got as much attention as other amendments in the Constitution. That's another discussion for the day. Okay, let's shift gears to the Philadelphia Eagles, who are in a bit of a space, and not a good one. Nick Sirianni, who's the head coach of the team, simply put, I think should be in the hot seat coming into this weekend. Or really on Monday Night Football when they play the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I'll put it to you as simply as this. If the Tampa Bay Buccaneers knock out the Philadelphia Eagles, Nick Sirianni should lose his job. It's that simple. Because, and I'm hearing, and I got in an argument with somebody about this the other day about Sirianni, and you can't fire him. He went 9-8 his first year after taking over a 4-11-1 team, and then he made the Super Bowl year two, and even this year, despite the late season collapse, 11 wins, back to the playoffs. They're favored to beat Tampa Bay, so a good opportunity for them to get back into the divisional round. Fair enough, but what I would contend is that if there's any organization that in recent history has fired guys, just literally in the last decade and a half or so, a little less than that have fired guys despite their success, it's Philadelphia. It's Howie Roseman. It's Jeffrey Lurie, the owner. Howie Roseman, the general manager, by the way. Andy Reid, who I just talked about in the Belichick segment, went to five NFC championship games. Went to a Super Bowl with Donovan McNabb and nearly knocked off the New England Patriots. Came close. Couple plays go Philly's way. They beat New England in the midst of that dynasty. Had one bad year in 2012. Off of your head. Get out of here, Andy. He goes to Kansas City, and obviously we know what Andy Reid's done with the Chiefs, especially since Mahomes got there he's drafted in 2017, started in 2018. They fired Chip Kelly, despite the fact that Chip Kelly, year one, 10-6 playoffs, year two, 10-6, missed the playoffs, year three, losing record, out of there. Didn't even let him finish his third year. They bring in Doug Peterson, who was in the Andy Reid coaching tree. Doug Peterson, first year, kind of a down season, have a rough late season stretch. Year two, loses his starting quarterback, takes Nick Foles, turns him into Brady almost, and then beats Brady in the Super Bowl with Foles playing out of his mind. That entire playoff run, especially that Vikings game as well in the NFC title game. Year 3 in 2018, they're defending their crown, but Wentz gets hurt again. They win another playoff game with Foles, almost win another playoff game against the 1-seed Saints. Year 4, no Foles. Wentz is below average, and with a roster that, I'm not even joking when I'm saying this, I'm dead serious. You could look this up. A roster that had practice squad guys playing regular snaps. Got to the playoffs, won the division. Bad year 2020, off with your head, Doug Peterson. So you're telling me that a guy, Nick Sirianni, who we've all kind of had questions about in regards to how important is he really to the Philadelphia Eagles? You're telling me he can't lose his job after a 10-1 start and his team absolutely vomits all over themselves in the last month and a half of the season? And most of these losses, I might add, aren't close. They got the doors blown off them against San Francisco. Well, San Francisco does that to a lot of teams. Did it to Dallas, did it to Jacksonville, and they do it to a lot of teams. Then they get the doors blown off them against a team they're familiar with, Dallas. Then they lose to Drew Lock, but a close game, right? Then they beat the Giants in a close game, which they supposedly specialize in. And then they lose a close game against a 3-win Cardinals team. And then week 18, they play all of their starters against a Giants team with not an ounce of anything to play for. And they're down 24-0 at halftime. And Jalen gets hurt. And A.J. Brown gets hurt. And all of a sudden, Nick Sirianni finds himself in a position where he could indeed lose his job. And if you look at the Eagles in their last 6 games since they started 10-1, they have the second worst record in the league at 1-5. They have the 4th worst points per game differential at negative 9.8. They have the worst opponent touchdowns given up, 21 in a 6-game stretch, and are -8 in the turnover differential battle. That's last in the NFL in that stretch. They're not very good in the last month and a half. That falls on the coach. Why does it fall on the coach, you might ask? Why does it not fall on the players? I'm not saying it doesn't fall on the players, but it's the same roster last year with 2 brilliant coordinators. A couple plays here or there, they beat Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. This is why I talk about the Chicago Bears. And I'm adamant about this. Don't care how he played in the last month. You trade Justin Fields and you bring in Caleb Williams. He's a generational talent. But and honest to God, this is not revisionist history. If Bryce Young was the number 1 pick, let's just say last year didn't even happen with the Panthers. Let's say Bryce Young came out in this year's draft, given all the things he did at Alabama, and the Bears had the first pick, I'd say keep Justin Fields. You know how I know that? Because they did it last year. They were 1,000% sure they could get a clear upgrade over Fields. Now they do. Do they know they do? Only time will tell. We have 3.5 months to decide that. But the rule in life, rule in sports especially, you don't fire somebody or cut somebody just to do that. You have to be 1,000% sure I can get a clear upgrade. This coach hiring and firing cycle has to be the deepest I've ever seen in my life. Belichick on the market, Vrabel on the market, Pete Carroll, who knows? He doesn't seem done with coaching from what I saw in that press conference. Jim Harbaugh very well could go back to the NFL. Sources say he probably is. Then you have Ben Johnson, Dan Quinn. Like, you have some dudes that are legitimate head coaching candidates. And you have an opportunity at one of them, and you're going to stick with Nick Sirianni. One of the marks of a great coach is when adversity hits, which it has. Clear adversity has hit twice with the Philadelphia Eagles in Nick Sirianni's tenure. When adversity hits, how do you respond? Year 1, they were 3-6. Adversity hit. They weren't very good. What did Nick Sirianni do? Take less of a role, which I commend him for, giving the play calling duties to Shane Steichen. And we saw what Shane did that year, the year after when they made the Super Bowl, and even this year with Gardner Minshew as his quarterback, almost got to the playoffs in the loaded AFC. Shane Steichen's a brilliant coach. Deferred to Shane Steichen. Props to him. But that meant less of a duty for Sirianni. In other words, the less Sirianni was involved, the better the team was. This year, adversity has hit, and you seemingly almost have players turning on the coach to a certain extent. Jalen Hurts, in his press conference the other day, speaking on the fact that he dislocated his finger that Giants game. He said, medically speaking, probably wasn't a good idea for me to go back into the game. That feels like a shot at the coach because that comes down to the medical staff, yes, but also to the coach to put the player back into the football game. A.J. Brown, we know he's dealt with issues with the media and with the team all year long. On his Instagram, deleted every single Philadelphia Eagles associated picture or post. Jason Kelce has on numerous occasions said, we're not playing very well. Devontae Smith has on multiple occasions said, we're not that good, or we're not playing that well. You have numerous players and coaches. Jalen Hurts has done so before. Numerous head coaches and players sounding the alarm bell. We're not playing that well right now. And in a game that they didn't play well, but won way back in week 11 rather, against the Kansas City Chiefs, Nick Sirianni, you know what he was doing? MF in the crowd. Yeah, you just mofo. Mother. Meanwhile, his players who seemingly are more mature than the coach, including a guy in Jalen Hurts who I think is about 20 years younger than Sirianni and is 15 times more mature, is like, yeah, we didn't play that well. You're telling me that a coaching market that has Belichick, Vrabel, potentially Carroll, and Harbaugh, not to mention Ben Johnson and Dan Quinn as pretty good consolation prizes, if I do say so myself, you're sitting up here and telling me, yeah, we're going to roll with Nick Sirianni. Put Belichick in Philadelphia. You think they're a better football team? You think that defense is just a little bit better? Folks, the Patriots lost their two best defensive players early on in the season. Matthew Judon, the pass rusher, Christian Gonzalez, who I think is going to be a superstar in the league, their standout rookie corner. They were still great defensively. In the upper half of virtually every statistical category with almost no talent because Belichick is a defensive wizard. You're telling me a defense that has Hassan Reddick, Jalen Carter, Fletcher Cox, Brandon Graham, Darius Leonard, Darius Slay. I'm sorry, Shaq Leonard. I apologize. He changed his name. Shaq Leonard, Darius Slay. You're telling me he can't make that defense good? Better than it is? Because the Eagles' defense is last in virtually every statistical category on the defensive side of the football. You're telling me Belichick can't fix that? You're telling me Dan Quinn could potentially fix that? Mike Vrabel, defensive coach, couldn't fix that? Offensive set, quarterback set. Belichick's issue was finding the talent and putting a good staff together, which that remains to be seen, but surely could be better than this Eagles staff. Jalen Hurts goes from MVP second place to Dak Prescott's stat line last year, and we were all, not me, we were all crushing Dak. Oh, he's terrible. He's overrated. Jalen's put that exact same stat line, 23 touchdowns, 15 picks, up this season after being second voting for MVP last year. My friends, that is coaching. The more of the role Sirianni has taken, the worse it's gotten. When adversity has hit, it's been better. See 2021 when he stepped out of the way. Look at the 14 playoff teams. In about 15 minutes, I'm going to do my NFL playoff weaknesses for the 14 teams. Which one? I'm looking down at the teams right now. Which team, whether you like their coach or not, is the coach's, which team is the responsibility of the coach to be, coach, don't screw it up. I would have said that about the Bengals if Zach Taylor was in, because I have some questions about him, but they're not in the playoffs. Name it. The role of the head coach is don't screw up. And in a market with Vrabel, Belichick, and potentially Carroll and Harbaugh on the market, you're going to roll with Nick Sirianni. Despite the fact that the locker room is a total train wreck, as is the defense. Okay. That is if they lose to Tampa Bay. I would almost maintain that even if they beat Tampa Bay and then Dallas crushes them, or San Francisco crushes them. I don't know. I mean, when you're more well known for your nonsense on the sideline and your horrendous press conferences than you are your actual coaching, that's a bit of a concern. That's a bit of a concern. I'll leave it at that. All right. So to college football for a second. This was not a good day for me as a Tennessee fan. I'm a passionate Vols fan. VFL, Vol for life. And I think the football program is going in a great direction. Josh Heupel's done a phenomenal job. Nico, I'm going to get his last name right before the season, I swear to y'all. Nico, our quarterback, has all the potential in the world. Number 1 high school ranked guy. Love where my Vols are at. And I'm not out here setting up an edition of the Vol View. So hang in here with me. But one of Tennessee's, historically speaking, one of their biggest rivals, the Alabama Crimson Tide, we got some good news. Us members of Vol Nation did that Nick Saban was retiring. Pay respect and pay tribute to him, of course. Not to the level Bama fans were. Bama fans were acting like the man died. And they had like this vigil. They had, it was like they had candles at Saban's statue, like he just like passed away or something. It's like he just retired. I mean, I like pay respect to him. He's not. Thank God he's not dead. Like, what are we doing? But that aside, I'm sitting here thinking, oh, this Alabama run might be over. We may not have to deal with this anymore. Today, the Alabama Crimson Tide hired Kalen DeBoer as their new head coach. And I'm not happy about it. If I were a Bama fan, I'd be over the moon about it. Because simply put, Kalen DeBoer is a guy who has a career record, and I'm not joking, of 104 wins, 12 losses. He's pretty good. Top 5 coach in all of college football, and I don't even think it's debatable. Everywhere he goes, he wins instantly. He's the Jim Harbaugh and Urban Meyer 3.0, really. So now you give Kalen DeBoer an Alabama team, an Alabama program that's among one of the most respected in college football, in arguably the toughest conference in college football. You just made a handoff from the greatest coach ever. Yes, anything beyond that is a downgrade. Other than that is a downgrade. But he go from greatest coach ever to top 5 coach currently. Kalen DeBoer is also a guy who in the last 9 years has 7, count that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 11-win seasons. 7 out of 9 coaching years, he's won 11 games. He's a fantastic head coach. And by the way, prayers for Washington fans, man. This has been a tough week for him. You lose the national championship game, you lose your quarterback to the draft, and the coach went to another school. It's not a good day for Washington fans, man. It's rough. Second year at Alabama, went to the national title game. Here's a fun stat as well. This is from Saturday Down South, which is a great college football Southern source. The guy that I thought was going to end up getting the job, Dan Lanning, who went on the Pat McAfee show this week and was like, no, I'm not taking the job. I'm going to be with Oregon, blah, blah, blah. And another guy others thought might take the job, Steve Sarkisian, head coach at Texas, because he was assistant under Saban. He has history with Alabama. But he's like, nope, I'm going to stay with Texas. It's a great brand here. We got a good thing going here down here in Austin. I'm going to stay in Texas. Those two guys who many viewed as kind of the front runners to get the Alabama job, Kalen DeBoer's 5-0 against them. So they actually got the best option on the market. And I think Sark's an excellent coach, and I think Dan Lanning is an up-and-coming, really, really good coach. But this dude's a phenomenal coach. So now you put him in a division. Yes, Brian Kelly's there in LSU. I still think Brian Kelly is a very good coach. Kind of a down year given the expectations at LSU. Lane Kiffin, who's dominating the transfer portal and has dominated the transfer portal with Ole Miss, he's still there. You're going to need an all-star level head coach to compete with those guys. And you get a dude who has 7 11-win seasons in the last 9 years. You have a guy who develops teams, cultures, personnel, recruits as well as anybody. It's as good in the transfer portal as anybody. Never forget, Michael Penix Jr., who I love, did not start at Washington. He started at Indiana. He had injuries. There were concerns. How good is this guy really? Transfers to Washington, and I'm out here arguing he's the second best quarterback in the draft. Kalen DeBoer had a lot to do with that. He's a culture builder. He's a great recruiter. He wins regardless of the talent that's with him. I mean, let's be honest. This is not shot Washington because they were a more than deserving college football playoff team. Do we think that they are the second most talented team in the country? Michigan is. Michigan's the most talented team in the country. They deserve to win the national title. Best coach team in the country under Harbaugh. You're telling me that Washington's the second best team? Georgia's better or more? Georgia's more talented. Texas is more talented. Bama, it's close. Not at quarterback, but in general, it's relatively close. Certainly the defensive side of the ball. There's plenty of teams I could throw out there. Oregon, who they beat twice. Oh, man. This is a rough day for me. I was in denial. I knew DeBoer was a possibility, because you had the fact that the athletic director at Washington did not hire him, so there's no real connection there. There's an athletic director. I forget the guy's name. He's blanking on it. Byrne, I think is his last name, who's very well respected at Alabama, who brings this guy in. The tide will roll on. We'll put it that way. The Tide's going to roll on. Now, are they going to continue this dynasty? No, I think it's Georgia's now. But they're not going anywhere. I'll put it that way. Recruiting to Alabama is going to be just as good, if not better. The transfer portal is going to be better because, and I love Saban, it's the greatest coach ever. He didn't really embrace the transfer portal that much. He embraced NIL, didn't really embrace the transfer portal. DeBoer does. Tell you what, Bama, this is with Saban retiring unexpectedly after the season is over, after early signing day, all that. This is literally the best case scenario you could have possibly hoped for if you're an Alabama Crimson Tide fan. This is about as good as it gets. So I've always been a Kalen DeBoer guy, but as a Vols fan now, I'm gonna be forced to root against him. It's kind of it's like Lamar Jackson. I freaking love Lamar, but when I was like, I'm gonna choose the Steelers, they're gonna be my team, and doggone, I gotta root against Lamar now. Rooting against the Ravens easier. Rooting against Lamar is not quite so much so. Same can be said about Kalen DeBoer. So shout out to him. I'm sure he's going to get a very lucrative deal at Alabama. He'll deserve every penny. And the Tide, they're not going anywhere. I really thought we were about to overtake these guys. And we may still. I love Coach Heupel. We've done a great job recruiting, the portal, etc. Dang it. I saw that news. I was like, gosh darn it, you got to be kidding me. But a great hire by Alabama, though. Great hiring. Best hiring. Like when I was hearing Dabo Swinney, I'm like, are you kidding me? Like you can't. If you hire Dabo Swinney, just run your football program into the ground. Because he's doing that right now with Clemson. Because he's unlike Saban. I mean, he won't. Saban at least kind of, he was fine with the transfer portal, didn't love it, but was okay with it. Dabo hates the transfer portal, hates NIL, which to me is even worse. And Clemson's nowhere near the level. It doesn't have anywhere near the level of talent they had when you could not pay kids. We'll put it that way. He's kind of stuck in the past. So hiring Dabo listen, as a Vols fan, I would have been overjoyed if they hired Dabo Swinney. They did not. Instead, they brought in a top 5 coach in the sport. And I'm not happy about it. But great hire nonetheless for Bama. Okay, so I do this every year, or the last 3 years before the NFL playoffs, is that every team, there is no such thing as a perfect team in the National Football League. Even Baltimore and San Francisco have warts and flaws somewhere. And my job the week before the playoffs is to, I don't want to say necessarily warn the fan bases, but at least give them a heads up. Like, hey, if you guys get knocked out of the playoffs, this is probably the reason why. I think year one, I did this before the 2021 season playoffs because it's early 2022. I went like 10 for 13, at least in my estimation, on the reasons that the teams got eliminated. Because 13 teams are going to not win the Super Bowl. One is, obviously. Last year, I think I went 8 for 13. So, trying to kind of improve upon that. So, playoff strengths and weaknesses. We do it every year the week before the playoffs. I was going to do this on Wednesday, but then the Saban news broke, so had to kind of postpone it a little bit. But AFC playoff weaknesses, we can get back. No, background music is on right now. AFC playoff weaknesses. Starting with my Pittsburgh Steelers. What's the Steelers' biggest weakness? Let's get this over with. I'm a Steelers fan. Let's get them over with. They're the 7th seed. Their biggest weakness is their only way to win is for you to screw up. It's quite that simple. Now, I'm not trying to disrespect or disregard the level of talent that's on the Steelers roster. I think it's a very talented roster. Even without TJ Watt, which is a devastating loss against the Buffalo Bills, Steelers are 1-10 without TJ Watt. It's still a great pass rush with Alex Highsmith. You got, obviously, Cam Hayward down inside, a good linebacking core, even with the injuries. Excellent secondary, Joey Porter, Patrick Peterson, Minka Fitzpatrick. Like, you got some dudes on that secondary. Offensively, Pickens, Najee Harris, Jalen Warren, Deontay Johnson, Pat Freiermuth. Like, you got some dudes on that offense. But Pittsburgh, in large part due to limited quarterback play and in large part due to the inability to kind of adjust to the modern NFL, they kind of have to just rely on you screwing up and then taking advantage of you screwing up. The Pittsburgh Steelers this season are 8-2 when they win the turnover battle. So basically at Buffalo, don't shoot yourselves in the foot and you will beat Pittsburgh. Like they can't win just playing just straight up or if they're even in the turnover battle. That's the biggest weakness with the Pittsburgh Steelers. That's the reason they will not win the Super Bowl. The 6th seed Miami Dolphins, their biggest weakness is they're too beat up and the quarterback is bad. I mean, bad. in big games. And for this weekend, I'll detail it more later. I'll give you the stats on this later. But Tua Tagovailoa is horrendous in cold games. But Tua, in his career, in either win or go home situations or win and keep yourself alive situations, dating back to his rookie year. Week 17 against Buffalo, he had a pass rating in the low 60s. Week 17 in 2021 against Tennessee, he had a pass rating in the low 50s. This a couple weeks ago against Baltimore, where if you win, you're the 1 seed. He had a pass rating of 71, 72 if you round up. And then against Buffalo last week, he had a pass rating again in the low 60s. I like Tua. I think he's a franchise quarterback. I think he's a top 12 guy in the league. He's not the type of dude who can carry you under adverse circumstances. That's just not how he's wired. How he's able to get it done with this Miami Dolphins offense. That's their biggest weakness. And as far as the Tua injury part, listen, Bradley Chubb's out, Jalen Waddle's out, Raheem Mostert's beat up. We'll see if he's able to come back along with Achane. They've been dealing with a ton of injuries. Xavier Howard is injured, so this Miami Dolphins team is just too beat up. Tua Tagovailoa struggles bad in big games, and this week in a freezing, and that's being nice, game in Kansas City. That's the biggest reason the Miami Dolphins will not win the Super Bowl. To the Cleveland Browns, the 5 seed in the AFC, their biggest weakness is January Joe is a turnover machine. January Joe, referring to Joe Flacco, who has 10 playoff victories on his resume with the Baltimore Ravens, has an exceptional. I always compare Joe Flacco to Madison Bumgarner. Like, both were good to very good at points in the regular season. Once, in Bumgarner's case, October rolled around, and for Flacco, January or February rolled around, he turned into a different quarterback. He turned into a type of dude that could go blow for blow with Brady or Manning. And Joe Flacco's come in, led the league in touchdown passes, I think at least before that game where they sat him against the Bengals last week, led the league in touchdown passes to that point since the Browns put him in the starting lineup as the starting quarterback. He leads in touchdowns. He also leads in picks. He's thrown 8 picks in the last month and a half. So that's a problem for Cleveland. They struggle with the turnover battle. After that, I like this roster. It's a good defense. Struggles on the road a little bit. Myles Garrett, we know the overpowering force that he is. Good secondary and linebacking core. Tremendous coaching, Kevin Stefanski. Great pieces offensively, even with the loss of Nick Chubb, Amari Cooper, David Njoku, etc. Great offensive line, but they're too limited at quarterback. That's what's going to cost them. January Joe has been a turnover machine. That is why the Cleveland Browns will not win this year's Super Bowl. To the 4 seed, the team the Browns are going to be playing, the Houston Texans. Their biggest weakness is special talent, just too young. Houston's coming. CJ Stroud's coming. D'Amico Ryans are coming. They are on the up. They're on the uptick. Nico Collins, young receiver they've got over there. Houston's going to be really, really good for years to come. It's just too young. Nobody could have seen this coming with the Houston Texans. If you predicted the AFC South before the season, I was a Jacksonville Jaguars guy. Some said Tennessee. There were even... I believe there might have been sort of the fringes taking Indianapolis with Anthony Richardson had he been healthy, and they almost did. But for the fact of the matter is, for this team to go from irrelevant number 2 pick in the draft last year to bring in CJ Stroud, do well in the draft the last few years, Nick Caserio, the GM, has done a fantastic job, former Patriot guy, to bring in this talent, develop into a team that's capable of making a playoff run, potentially not really a long run, but to make a little bit of noise, to scare somebody in the playoffs. Props to them. D'Amico Ryans, arguably Coach of the Year. CJ Stroud, inarguably Offensive Rookie of the Year. It's just too young of a team. No quarterback in the history of the NFL has led their team to the Super Bowl as a rookie. I anticipate that streak will continue. That is why the Texans will not win the Super Bowl. To the team that did win the Super Bowl last year, the defending champion Kansas City Chiefs. Their biggest weakness is they turn the ball over and they don't take the ball away. The Kansas City Chiefs, bottom 5 in the NFL in turnover differential. They don't take the football away on defense, and they turn the ball over way too much on offense. In the games that the Chiefs have won the turnover battle, basically think of the Chiefs as the Pittsburgh Steelers with an infinitely better quarterback and a better offensive scheme, obviously, is the fact that Kansas City has lost 1 game all year. 1 game in which they have won the turnover battle. That was way back in week 1 against the Detroit Lions. Every other game, they don't turn the ball over, or they don't turn the ball over as much as the opponent. They win. So this game against Miami, kind of an opportunistic defense. Jalen Ramsey, we'll see what happens in his matchup with whoever he's lined up against. And even in the future, assuming Kansas City wins the game, not turning the football over because they just simply don't have the margin for error that they used to. No Tyreek Hill. Last year, the offense was far better than this year's offense. Travis Kelce's getting up there in age. Kansas City cannot afford to shoot itself in the foot. So listen, they turn the ball over too much. They take the ball away too much. That is why the Kansas City Chiefs will not win the Super Bowl this season. To the 2 seed Buffalo Bills, who my Steelers will be playing on Sunday, their biggest weakness is they routinely have stretches of awful offensive football. Awful. When you think about Buffalo, they could have games like all the way back in week 4 against Miami, in which they score 48 points. And then they can play Miami again later in the season and score 21 points. So less than half. They could play the Jets all the way back in week 1 and not break 20, play them again later in the season, score over 30 points. So this is a team that's very hot and cold, up and down, and kind of reflects their quarterback to a certain degree. I always said Josh Allen, I said on Monday's show after that game, I said that he is the ultimate, Josh Allen, are you insane? Or really, are you insane? Where he makes an amazing play with his arm or his legs. Are you insane? Look at this guy. And then he makes the boneheaded errors, and you're like, you insane? What are you doing? That's kind of how the Bills are on the offensive side of the ball, and we all know. Listen, the offense runs through the quarterback, probably in no team more so than Buffalo in terms of Josh Allen's arm and his legs. That is why the Buffalo Bills will not win this year's Super Bowl. And to the 1 seed, they ain't got to play this week, so no weaknesses to worry about in the wild card round. Then the 1 seed Baltimore Ravens, their biggest weakness is fourth quarter concerns are a real thing. It is. It's a real thing for the Baltimore Ravens. Because, listen, this roster is phenomenal. It's the only one I think is comparable to San Francisco, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Fact of the matter is this. Ravens have blown 10 double-digit leads since the 2020 season. That leads the National Football League. This is something they've got to clean up, something that they've got to fix going into the postseason. Because, listen, when you're playing a Mahomes or a Josh Allen, or maybe if you end up playing a CJ Stroud, these are dudes that can play from behind. It's kind of the anti-49ers. These are dudes that can play from behind and make some noise, do some damage on you. So this is something that the Baltimore Ravens have got to correct. And listen, they have the personnel to do so. They have the best defense in football. They have the MVP of the league on offense. Again, it's a little nitpicky. Ravens fans might get mad at me, but if nothing else, I would respond and say it's actually kind of a compliment because there's not really any weaknesses other than that. This is obviously the betting favorite in Vegas to not only win the AFC, but to win the Super Bowl. Rightfully so. That is the biggest reason the Baltimore Ravens will not win the Super Bowl. So let's do an AFC recap. Then we'll do NFC. But from 7-1, we go bottom to the top. Steelers to the Ravens. Biggest reason the Steelers will not win the Super Bowl, or really, I'll just rephrase it. Steelers' biggest weakness is their only way to win is for you to screw up. As for the Dolphins, 2 beat up, and quarterback is bad in big games. For the Browns, January Joe is a turnover machine. Talk about Joe Flacco. For the Texans, special talent, just too young. For the Chiefs, they turn the ball over and they don't take the ball away. For the Bills, they routinely have stretches of awful offensive football. And finally, for the Baltimore Ravens, fourth quarter concerns are a real thing. Something you got to look out for if you're a Ravens fan is if you're in kind of a game, and we know, especially if you play the Chiefs. I know the Chiefs have been down this year. Nobody likes the Chiefs this season. But listen, there's no quarterback, and I include the greatest ever, Tom Brady, in this. There's no quarterback in the history of the league that you would rather not face than Mahomes when down by double digits. I think he has a winning record when trailing by double digits, which is crazy. I mean, won last year's Super Bowl against both of his Super Bowl wins have come when trailing by double digits. The 49ers game back in 2020 and then the Eagles game last year. So they like coming back from behind. They love kind of catching off guard, so to speak. And that's what the Chiefs do. So if the Ravens find themselves in a matchup with Kansas City and that's the scenario, watch out. Looks like we're dealing with some connection issues. See if we can get this back on. I know that, listen, this has been a crazy, again, I'll obviously predict the games in just a second. This has been a crazy weekend across America and is going to be in terms of the weather. I mean, it is like here where I'm at, we had like 50, 60 mile an hour gusts. It's crazy. Crazy stuff here in Tennessee. Okay. Now, as far as the NFC, let's get the background music back on. NFC, biggest strengths and weaknesses. Put the graphic back. Okay. NFC strengths and weaknesses coming into the postseason. Let's start with the 7 seed, the Green Bay Packers. What's their biggest weakness? Defense is trash. I'm just going to be straight up with you. I'm not going to BS around. Defense is trash for the Green Bay Packers. If you look at their defensive statistics this year, they are nothing short of atrocious in every way, shape, and form, no matter how you look at it. If I can pull these up here because they are horrendous. Doggone it. Okay, we've got it. Okay. Green Bay Packers, 28th in the NFL in opponent touchdown to interception ratio, 25th in opponent passer rating, 25th in opponent third down percentage, 28th in opponent rush yards per game and 25th in opponent 20-plus yard plays. So they can't stop the run, can't stop the pass. They give up big plays. They give up a lot of points. They're not very good. And what's crazy is I kind of like some of the personnel. Jair Alexander, back from the suspension last week. He's had kind of a down season. But he's still a very capable number one corner. I like some of the guys they got in the secondary. Their pass rush, Rashawn Gary. I like some of the guys they got over there. But just in general, man, it is Joe Barry's probably going to lose his job, the defensive coordinator, at the end of the year. Joe Barry to the Packers is what Matt Canada was to my Steelers. Just an albatross around the neck of that side of the football. Listen, I like the Packers offense. I think Jordan Love's playing great. The receivers, this is a bad defense, and it will cost them sooner rather than later. That is why the Packers will not win the Super Bowl. 2, the Los Angeles Rams, the team who won the Super Bowl a couple years back. What's their biggest weakness? Special teams is a liability. They went through multiple kickers. They had a game against the New York Giants in which special teams almost cost them in a game that they outplay the Giants. They're up 7. They punt the football away. Gunnar Olszewski, former Pittsburgh Steelers, caused me a lot of headaches as a Steeler, but he returns the kick all the way to the house, like 90-plus yards, but the Giants don't convert in a 2-point conversion. Giants get the ball back, and a missed field goal preserves the win for the G-Men. So this is, this preserves the win for the Rams, rather. So special teams actually hurt the Giants in that game. But special teams for LA is a problem. They went through Brett Maher, who I believe is their kicker right now, who's kind of inconsistent up and down. Cowboys fans can tell you a lot about that in his rough postseason run a year ago. Punting has struggled. I've just been dealing with a lot of injuries in the special teams. They're not good that good situationally, special teams wise. They could sure use Bones Fossil, who's with the Rams for a long time now, is with the Dallas Cowboys. He's a great special teams guy, but that's been an issue with the Los Angeles Rams. I like Matt Stafford. I love Matt Stafford, and I love what they've been doing offensively. Defensively, they got some good young players to go along with one of the GOATs, Aaron Donald. That said, that is why the Rams will not win this year's Super Bowl. To the team that came oh so close a year ago of winning the Super Bowl, but alas, they fell short. The Philadelphia Eagles, their biggest weakness is the defense is atrocious, and the head coach is a poor leader. I already talked about the head coach earlier, Nick Sirianni. This is the second time in his career in Philadelphia that he has faced real legit adversity. Year 1 in 2021, they were 3-6, weren't very good. His response, rightfully so, by the way, was to give the play calling duties to Shane Steichen. Translation, the less I'm involved, the better we are. And we're seeing that right now with the Philadelphia Eagles. Shane Steichen gone, Jonathan Gannon gone. Bad coordinators that try and make a change at defensive coordinator midseason. The locker room seems to not really believe in their coach. It's a mess. In terms of Philadelphia's defense, again, we talk about atrocious, we talk about unwatchable. It is absolutely horrendous. They're bottom 10 in virtually every category in regards to points per game allowed. In terms of pass yards per game allowed, this is a Philadelphia defense that can get torched, that can get exposed on a week-to-week basis. I believe we have stats to go along with this. It does not look like they are available at this particular juncture in time. But again, Philadelphia struggling in all the major categories in terms of points per game. They're not very good. They did a solid job against the run, but even in recent weeks, Arizona ran for 200 on them. So that's a concern with Philadelphia. They got a beat-up quarterback, Jalen Hurts. Not much right is going for the Philadelphia Eagles. Most of it stems from the head coach. That is why the Philadelphia Eagles will not win the Super Bowl. 2, a team that won 3 years ago, albeit with the greatest who ever did it, Tom Brady. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, their biggest weakness is they can't win shootouts. They just can't. Only 3 times this season has Tampa Bay scored 30 points this season. Baker Mayfield, hats off to him. He's absolutely been a resurgent season. He might be in the running potentially. We'll see what they do with DeMar Hamlin. But Baker Mayfield very well could be comeback player of the year because he looked almost kind of left for dead in Tampa. He's Brady's replacement. They're going to fire Bowles at the end of the season. And Baker leads him to the division title. So Bowles is going to keep his job. Baker's going to get extension. It's all happy times for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But if it comes down to a situation where they're having to go back and forth, even with a Philly, a Dallas, a Detroit, a San Francisco, and you got to go tit for tat with them up and down the field, that's just not Tampa Bay's forte. Like their weapons, love Mike Evans, but they can't really run the football that well. Baker does have limitations, and right now he has some physical limitations with the rib issues. Listen, it's a cool story. Hats off to Tampa Bay. They're more than deserving of winning the NFC South. But that is why the Buccaneers will not win the Super Bowl. The offense is just not good enough. To the Detroit Lions, a team that I predicted before the season to get to the NFC title game. Tampa Bay can't win shootouts. That's their weakness. The Lions' weakness is they can't win unless it's a shootout. So it's a little bit of a turnaround there for the Detroit Lions. According to this, the Lions, 4 of their 5 losses are when they have not scored 30 points. this season. So this is a team that's got to kind of go up and down the field on you. Jared Goff's had a great year. Jahmyr Gibbs, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Sam Laporta, at least before the injury, Jamison Williams, David Montgomery, great O-line. Like, they've got, Detroit has everything you could possibly want on the offensive side of the ball. Not a lot of big names, although I believe St. Brown and Laporta will be big names soon to come, but it's a defense that has struggled mightily. They've given up some offensive explosions by some teams in the past, in particular the Baltimore Ravens all the way back in October. This is a defense that can get to the quarterback on occasion. Aiden Hutchinson, one of the better guys in terms of pressures, but offensively they just can't keep up. They can keep up with the best, but if you're being asked to score every single time down the field, even for an offense as loaded as Detroit is and as well coached as it is with Ben Johnson, future head coach, as the OC, that's just simply too tall of a task to ask. But the Lions cannot win. If it's a game where the other team is playing well and Detroit's not able to catch up, that's going to cost them the end. So that is the reason why the Lions will not win the Super Bowl. To the Dallas Cowboys, my pick to get to the Super Bowl. Their weakness is the offense is one true perimeter threat. That is obviously CeeDee Lamb. So the offense for the Cowboys all year has run through number 4, Dak Prescott, and has run through number 88, CeeDee Lamb. Now, that's not always a bad thing. CD is the second best receiver in the sport right now. Dak's the fourth best quarterback in general in the sport right now. I only have him behind Mahomes, Burrow, and Lamar Jackson. That's not just this season. That is in totality, ladies and gentlemen. But if you look at the Dallas Cowboys receiving core, beyond CeeDee Lamb, it's a lot of Jalen Tolberts. It's a lot of Jake Ferguson's, Michael Gallup, who's not the same player he used to be, Tony Pollard, who's had barely over 1,000 yards in a full 17-game season. And their number 2 receiver, you say, what about Brandon Cooks? The Brandon Cooks, who is 59th in receiving yards, 68th in catches, 116th in terms of average yards per catch. That's gonna hurt the Cowboys potentially in the postseason. If other teams, other defenses like San Francisco, like Detroit, like others decide to double the Rams, decide to double CeeDee Lamb, or God forbid, knock on wood, CeeDee Lamb goes down, gets hurt, then who's Dak going to go to? Now, Dak's done a good job of elevating those guys, but having CeeDee Lamb has certainly not hurt that case in any way, shape, or form. This Cowboys defense is capable of being the best in the field any given Sunday. Dak's capable of being the best quarterback in the field. CeeDee Lamb is capable of being the best receiver on the field. It's the other guys in Dallas. And by the way, great offensive line this year when healthy. It's the other guys on offense. Pollard, Cooks, Tolbert, Gallup, Ferguson. I have questions about that. Is why the Dallas Cowboys will not win the Super Bowl. Finishing off with the 1 seed 49ers, who don't have to worry about any weaknesses this week. They can rest up, get ready for the divisional round. But the 49ers' biggest weakness is they don't play well from behind. They simply don't. Brock Purdy, in games in which he trails, in the games he's played this season, games which Brock Purdy trails in the fourth quarter, he has 1 touchdown, 3 picks, has a completion percentage of 56%, and has a passer rating of 61. Brock Purdy is a guy that I do believe is one of the 12 or 13 best quarterbacks in the league, has had a phenomenal season, and is more than deserving of getting to the Pro Bowl this year. I've been a guy sturdy Purdy since day one, but he's not in that class of quarterbacks under adverse circumstances. Maybe a guy's down, guy got hurt at some point this year, that he can kind of carry you, put you on your put you on his back and take you to a win. That's just not his MO. And by the way, Kyle Shanahan's a guy who I believe the stat is 1-38 when at any point trailing by 8 or more. 0-38 when at one point trailing by 8 or more going into, or at any point in the fourth quarter. That's a telling stat. I believe that's what the stat is, 0-38. The 49ers struggle mightily in that regard. The roster's phenomenal. Love just about everything about it, including the quarterback. But simply put, they are not a team that is capable of playing from behind. That points to the coach and his history, and the quarterback and his history and statistical output. That is why the 49ers will not win this year's Super Bowl. Let's look back through the NFC. 7-1 Packers to 49ers. For the Packers, the biggest weakness, defense is trash. For the Rams, special teams is a liability. For the Eagles, defense is atrocious and head coach is a poor leader. For the Buccaneers, can't win shootouts. For the Lions, can't win unless it's a shootout. For the Cowboys, offense has one true perimeter threat. And finally, for the 49ers, don't play well from behind. If they did, they'd be the most unstoppable team in the league. They just would. Comments here by my man John Rivera of the Fan Perspective Podcast. Our team's playing tonight, by the way. John, Bulls versus Warriors. John, I'll respond to his comment in just a second. We were talking the other day about potential trade scenarios, about who could get, maybe we could take Zach LaVine or somebody, and who he'd want in response. Report came out today that Golden State is interested in a 7-footer who's, what was the quote? Let me pull it up here and I think Shams Charania, who we know the insider extraordinaire that he is. This says Golden State's according to Tim Kawakami, who covers the Warriors for The Athletic. The Warriors are looking to trade for a, quote, offensive-minded 7-footer and will likely trade Andrew Wiggins. Now, the Bulls have Vucevic. I guess you could say offensive-minded, so maybe the Bulls and Warriors are involved in a trade in some way. Now get your comment, John. He says, yeah, we're getting the same 50 to 60 mile per hour winds in John's in New York, so there you go. And rain and snow. I saw Buffalo. Obviously, I'm keeping up with the weather in Buffalo with my Steelers playing there. Man, it is coated. And so you can't even see the dang seats or the field or anything. It's unbelievable. And John says Dallas should put up 28 points or more. They should. Again, they're an explosive offense at home. Green Bay is a terrible defense. So you would anticipate that would be the case. Saw this quote from an individual in Buffalo that I may have to read when we get to my picks for the Steelers and Bills. Literally just came across my social media feed just now. Very interesting quote. That's I will leave it at that. But let me get these graphics on here, these playoff graphics, to make sure we're set and ready to go. Again, I will not be predicting Tampa Bay, Philadelphia until Monday's show. I did the same with the Rams and Cardinals, and then last year with the Cowboys and Buccaneers. I'm going to predict Eagles, Buccaneers on Monday's show, so get ready to go for that. And kind of go into that and really spend a lot of time on what could be had it been on Sunday or Saturday, which I saved those games, Saturday and Sunday games, for my Bryson's Bleak bet. If I were a Bettin Man, upset of the week, I save those for those games. I don't do that for Monday night or Thursday night football during the regular season. I'm not going to change the rules for the playoffs. But that said, Eagles, Buccaneers, first of all, I still have not made my pick. And second of all, I guess I kind of know where I'm leaning. But second of all, that would be my Bryson's Bleak bet. Grady Edwards. Not going to lie, I watched that Jason Whitlock tirade live. That man is the real version of Uncle Ruckus. Used to listen to him, but then caught on to him. That man is human trash. Yep. You went further than I did, Grady, but I agree with you. I try to play it as nice as I could, because the thing is, I don't know Whitlock. I do know how he stands, what he stands for. Like I said, talked about that earlier in the show. And listen, when you have people, first of all, the things that Stephen A was saying on his show, we have evidence that he's 100% right. He's 100% telling the truth. And Whitlock said, it just shows. He said something on the other day. I didn't watch the show because I wouldn't waste my time like that. I care too much about myself and my mental health. But Jason Whitlock said something like, him getting all emotional, that shows that I'm right. It's like, what he was saying was true, doofus. Oh, boy. Listen, I don't care how you vote politically. I'm friends with conservatives. I'm friends with liberals. I'm friends with independents. I am an independent. But when very conservative, Clay Travis says, I don't want anything to do with you, fires you from Outkick, that's bad. That tells me you're not a conservative. You are an opportunist. You are somebody that's trying to look for attention and capitalize on your complete lack of talent. Patrick Brown. Sub-zero temperatures in the Midwest. Stay safe and warm. You're not kidding, Patrick. That Kansas City, I'll get to that game in a second. That Kansas City-Miami game, I saw something that the Dolphins, then I'll get into my picks. I saw something that the Dolphins practice indoors because, again, outdoors in Miami, it's sunshiny, 75 degrees. That's not exactly going to prepare them for a game that's going to be negative 30 wind chill. They practice indoors, and they turn the AC down to 50. It's like, oh, boy. Oh, they ain't ready for this. So basically, their preparation or the best they could. I'm not even saying necessarily just ripping them, because that might have been the best that they had. Because I don't know if they could have traveled to a different state. I don't know. But their preparation for what might be the coldest game in NFL history, not named the Ice Bowl of the 60s, their preparation is basically playing in a very cold living room. Whew. That could be a problem. Who plays Grady says, who plays Kansas City if they win? Well, Buffalo wins, they go to Buffalo. If Buffalo loses, Kansas City would play either Cleveland or Houston. But like I said, I'll do my picks and then I'll save Eagles, Tampa Bay for Monday's show. Let's stop messing around. Let's get into the playoffs, ladies and gentlemen. This is what we've been waiting for, and so I'm gonna get the more intense music on. This is what we've been waiting for. The NFL playoffs begin tomorrow. Get the background music going. Here we go. We will start with the Cleveland Browns and the Houston Texans to kick off the NFL playoffs. It feels like every time Houston makes the playoffs, they always get the first game on NBC because Houston's not a big brand. Houston's a big city, but the Texans aren't that big of a brand. It's the newest team in the NFL to this point. So, you have that component on it as well. But Cleveland going to Houston, the Texans are underdogs at home. Browns are favored at -1.5. Now, the line was as high as -2.5, and I think I might have saw at one point get to 3. It's come down to 1.5, so a lot of people are betting Houston right now. Listen, Cleveland is undeniably, at least in my view, obviously the more experienced team, the better team, veteran coaching staff. Jim Schwartz coaching the defense has done a great job. Kevin Stefanski would probably get my vote for Coach of the Year, and that's the guy who said Dan Campbell will win it coming into the season. But Stefanski's done a phenomenal job. He's used 4 quarterbacks. The latest one he's used was on his couch up until a couple months ago. All of a sudden, Cleveland is in a position where folks are like, hey, can they make a run? With Joe Flacco, a guy who's going to turn 39 years old on Monday. Happy early birthday to Mr. Flacco. So for Houston, though, in their case, listen, they win the AFC South. They were probably the surprise of the NFL season in the sense that they had the second pick last year. They draft C.J. Stroud. They hired DeMeco Ryans. Everything changes. It just goes to show you, when you get the quarterback right and the coach right, it cleans up or at least fills a lot of the holes that you have in your roster. Houston certainly has them, but they got good young talent. Nico Collins has had a great year as their young receiver there. They have some talent on defense. Will Anderson, who I think is going to be a star in the National Football League, the 3rd overall pick in this year's draft. Nick Sirianni has done a great job with this Houston team. This was almost the Bryson Bleak bet game, but the more time I spent on it, the more confident I was in this pick. Here's what it comes down to. Joe Flacco's balled out in the last couple of months in terms of the touchdown passes. I believe he leads outside of that game that he didn't play against the Bengals last week when they were resting their starters. Joe Flacco led the league in touchdown passes in the games that it's from the time span that he came in to now, the entire NFL. He also leads the NFL in interceptions with 8. So he gives you the ball. Houston's a team that is capable, with DeMeco Ryans, defensive guy coaching the team, of taking the ball away, Derek Stingley, etc. So I'm going to go upset. I'm going to go with the Houston Texans winning this game 24-21 over the Cleveland Browns. I think C.J. Stroud's going to have a good day. And listen, Cleveland's defense, as good as it's been, has been oddly bad on the road. It's been a team that struggled in many ways. Myles Garrett, since he got hurt this year, here's this stat. Myles Garrett, who some are oddly arguing should win Defensive Player of the Year over T.J. Watt. Myles Garrett, from weeks 12 to 17, has a grand total of 1 sack, 1 single solitary sack on the year, and only 7 quarterback hits to his 23 from weeks 1 to 11 when he got injured. So Myles Garrett's beat up. This is still a very good Browns defense, but I like this Houston team. I think they're capable of winning a playoff game. C.J. Stroud's going to do his thing, and the Houston Texans, I'm not even going to say walk-off field goal or anything like that. I think the Texans get a stop at the end defensively, and Houston wins this game 24-21 over the Cleveland Browns. Give me Houston in the upset. To the Saturday night game. It is now time for my favorite segment of the week. It is now time for Bettin Man. If I were a betting man, this is one of my favorite bets of the year. If I were a betting man, I'm taking a good hard look. The Miami Dolphins and the Kansas City Chiefs in Arrowhead Stadium. A stadium that is going to be reportedly -2 degrees at kickoff. And that's not the worst part. Reports say meteorologists in Kansas City, Missouri say wind chills are going to potentially get up to -30, which would in a sense make it the coldest game in NFL history, not named the Ice Bowl in the 60s between the Cowboys and Vince Lombardi's Packers. Tom Landry's Cowboys, by the way. Shout out to Coach Landry. But listen, this is the defending champion Kansas City Chiefs. Is a team that has already struggled with drops coming into the season. Already struggled with drops. Now you're basically going to be asking them to catch a brick. Because that's what, or a cold brick, a cold, hard brick on that field, because essentially that's what the football feels like in temperatures. It's going to be what it's going to be in Kansas City. Here's the problem, though. As much as the cold is going to affect the Kansas City Chiefs, as much as the cold is going to affect anybody that's not the abominable snowman, the Miami Dolphins are even worse shape, and their quarterback, Tua Tagovailoa, is in even worse shape. I looked this up about Tua. How does Tua fare in cold weather games? He's 6-13 in games played under 70 degrees. So basically, when it's not either warm or very hot, which personally I consider upper 60s to be warmish. But the point is, under 60, Tua Tagovailoa is 6-13. It gets worse, though, Dolphins fans. In games played under 40 degrees, he's never won. 0-10. And a lot of these games late season, which Tua has not played very well, has come in bad circumstances from a weather perspective. Patrick Mahomes, on the other hand, has been great in the sense of playing cold weather games for years in Kansas City. It doesn't get harder than this or colder than this in terms of Mahomes' career, but I get everybody's down the Chiefs. Nobody thinks the Chiefs are going to make a run. They were my preseason pick to win the Super Bowl. Listen, Mahomes, all he is maybe the greatest playoff quarterback ever, including Brady. He's first in win percentage, first in completion percentage, first in yards per game, first in touchdown to interception ratio, and first in passer rating in NFL playoff history. Travis Kelce, 16 touchdown catches all-time in the playoffs. I believe that is second all-time to the greatest receiver himself, Mr. Jerry Rice. So they've got the playmakers there. I think it's going to be a big-time Isaiah Pacheco game. I get those that are making the case for the Dolphins are saying, hey, they're not going to throw the ball much. It's going to be a Raheem Mostert, Devon Achane game. I don't believe that. No Jalen Waddle. Eventually, they're going to panic to a certain degree. Low-scoring game. Take the under. I think the under is like 40. Smash the under if you're betting in Vegas. Chiefs win this game. A low-scoring affair. 19-9 over the Miami Dolphins. Again, a low-scoring one. God bless these players, and God bless the fans. Players get paid. Players get paid. They're getting their check, win, lose, or draw. There's no draw in the playoffs. Win or lose. These fans in Kansas City, reports are tickets are as low as $40 right now. In my opinion, they should pay the Chiefs fans $40 or more to sit in those stands. Whew, that's some rough conditions. Grady, Miami is getting blown out. Kansas City will find a way to get to the AFC title game, in my opinion. I agree, my friend. I don't think it's going to be blowout in the sense that they just destroy them. But, man, could the Dolphins have asked for a worse draw? I think this is one of the easiest bets of the week. If you're betting one game, this is why I call it If I Were a Bettin Man. Where's the quote there?
Bettin Man.
If I were a betting man, this is easy. This is easy. Grady, I was talking about the Chiefs. Whatever happens after that, I don't know. This team reminds me of the Patriots in the 2013-14 season after we lost Aaron Hernandez and all those good receivers. Gronk was hurt, and we played Denver really tough. That's a solid comparison. And I've said before, this Chiefs team reminds me a lot of those Patriots teams because of the fact that you've got obviously a great defense, great quarterback, great tight end that's getting up there in age, and a great coach who specializes in a certain side of the ball. I'm going to roll with the Chiefs 19-9 in a low-scoring affair in what might be the coldest game in the modern era in NFL history. To Sunday's games. Here we go. It is now time for my upset of the week. Give me the Pittsburgh Steelers, ladies and gentlemen, over the Buffalo Bills, 17-16 in Buffalo, New York, and here is why. Listen, I get it. No TJ Watt. The Steelers are 1-10 without TJ Watt since he was drafted in 2017. I understand that. I do. I get it. But here's the thing. When I was talking about my playoff weaknesses for each of the 14 teams, what I said about the Pittsburgh Steelers? Their only way to beat you is if you screw up. The Steelers are 8-2 in games when they win the turnover battle. Well, is there any quarterback who turns the football over more than Josh Allen? Aside from, I believe, Sam Howell, there ain't. Josh Allen's going to throw the ball to Pittsburgh. And this reminds me a lot because reports in Buffalo say it's already snowing. It's already going to be freaking cold in Buffalo. Reports are wind gusts are going to exceed 50 miles per hour. Windy game. That reminds me, it seems like the Bills a couple of years ago played a windy game. I think the gusts were about 40 miles an hour, so not as bad circumstances. And they played, Grady, you're going to like this, the New England Patriots with rookie Mac Jones at quarterback. And Mac Jones on that day in Foxborough played start to finish, didn't get hurt. He completed 2 more passes than you and I did, unless you're an NFL quarterback. And the Patriots won 14-10, I think was the final score. 14-10, 14-11. Low-scoring affair. The wind conditions sucked. The Bills kept throwing it and throwing it and throwing it. Some of that is that the fact they didn't have as good of a run game then as they do now. James Cook is a Pro Bowler. Offensive line's much better. But here's how I view it. Both teams are going to be dissuaded by the weather to not throw forward passes. The Steelers are okay with that. The way the offensive line's been playing lately with Jalen Warren and Najee Harris, been pretty good. Had a game against Seattle a couple weeks ago, ran for 200 yards in Seattle. Ran for over 100 last week in Baltimore. Maybe set up the occasional play action. Get a turnover, a strip sack fumble on Josh Allen. Josh Allen in this game. Not much because of the weather, but Josh Allen in this game is going to make a couple "are you insane" moments. Like, I can't believe he just did that. He's amazing. And also, are you insane? What are you doing? Joey Porter's going to have a pick six in this game, ladies and gentlemen. You heard it here first. And also, too, a little bulletin board material, if I do say so myself. The governor of New York warned Steelers fans not to travel to Buffalo, that it will be a long game. Oh, if there's anything the Pittsburgh Steelers like, it is long games. It is hard games. It is physical games. It is hard-nosed games. It is cold games. The Pittsburgh Steelers. And the upset of the week and the upset of the playoffs, frankly, will dethrone the fraudulent contender that is the Buffalo Bills. 17-16. Adverse weather conditions, that, my friends, favors the team in the Pittsburgh Steelers. That is the better defense, the better receivers. Gabe Davis, by the way, out too for Buffalo. And the better coach, Mike Tomlin. Upset of the week, my Steelers 17-16 over the Buffalo Bills. Move on now to Dallas, Texas, the Green Bay Packers. The Dallas Cowboys. These two, to say the very least, have an extended playoff history. You got the Ice Bowl in the 60s, which the Packers won. The Packers and Cowboys actually faced off in the last time the Cowboys made the NFC title game in 1995. Brett Favre was quarterbacking Green Bay. Troy Aikman was quarterbacking Dallas. The Cowboys won that game. And in recent years, it has been Aaron Rodgers, of course, no longer a Packer, who's owned Dallas. You think about 2014, the other day was the anniversary, or actually yesterday was the anniversary of the Dez Bryant catch-no-catch game, which the Packers won at Lambeau. 2 years later, Dak's rookie year. Packers came to Dallas. Aaron Rodgers, with nothing short of spectacular, made maybe the throw of the season to Jared Cook on the sideline. Broke my heart as a man who used to be a Cowboys fan, still a Dak fan. And Mason Crosby hit the walk-off field goal to send Green Bay to the NFC title game and to send Dallas home. Very, very sad. Well, they meet again in Dallas. Green Bay, 3-6. And then they go on this run, win 6 of their last 7. Jordan Love plays exceptionally well. Second in the NFL in touchdown passes. Dallas, on the other hand, who, by the way, the Cowboys are favored -7. Dallas comes into this matchup in a situation where they are, well, they're kind of rolling at home. First of all, they're 16-0 in their last 16 home games. And as well, if we could pull up this graphic here about how good Dallas is on their home field, on their home turf. Do we have it here? Okay, Cowboys this season undefeated at home, 8-0. They average 37 points per game. The opponent point differential is 15.9, so they win by an average of about 16 points per game at home. And their point per game differential is plus 21.5. Not only do they win at home, they smoke you at home. It's that simple. This defense plays well. Again, young defense, plays on turf. It plays to their speed. And the Packers, on the other hand, as great as the Cowboys' offense has been at home, the Packers have been just as bad defensively. Home, road, doesn't matter. Green Bay, 28th in the NFL in opponent touchdown to interception ratio. 25th in opponent passer rating. Given up. 25th in opponent third down percentage. 28th in opponent rush yards per game. And 25th in 20-plus yard plays given up. Green Bay, simply put, it's not very good defensively. Dallas at home, phenomenal offensively. Now, Dallas defensively can be exposed in terms of the running game. And I think that's something that Green Bay will have success with early. Aaron Jones, A.J. Dillon, the Packers' best shot to beat Dallas, to shock Dallas in Jerry World. Have the ball, bleed clock, Jordan Love, play action. Not saying like take the game out of Jordan Love's hands necessarily, but this is a game you can't win a shootout with Dallas on. You can't. If it comes down to Dak versus Love, Dak's going to get the advantage there. And as time goes on, as Dallas continually, gradually builds the lead, I think it will be too much for the cool story that's the Packers to overcome. Give me the Dallas Cowboys to cover and win this game. 41-24 over the Green Bay Packers. Again, 24 for the Packers. They'll have some success offensively, maybe get a garbage time touchdown at the end, who knows. But listen, Green Bay's defense is atrocious. Dallas's offense is phenomenal at home, and Dallas has a lot to prove in the postseason. That's as fired up as I've seen Dak, as focused as I've seen Dak. He'll be ready to go to put together a fantastic playoff run for the Cowboys. Dallas wins and covers the 7-point spread, 41-24 over the Green Bay Packers. We've got my man Philip Chenault. Shout out to Philip. We had lunch yesterday. That's my guy right there. He said, the more I've been thinking about this game versus the Packers, the more it terrifies me. They've got Aaron Jones, which has been great recently, and the run defense is our talking about the Cowboys, run defense is suspect. It's the Cowboys. I'm expecting the worst. Well, listen, I understand that. Cowboys fans have been through a lot as a franchise, as a fan base. There's no question about that. Again, yesterday, the 9-year anniversary of the Dez Bryant catch-no-catch game. But I will tell you, Philip, Green Bay will have success against Dallas' defense. I don't like Dallas against the run. And you're right, Aaron Jones, by the way, thank you, Philip, for bringing this up. Aaron Jones, I think since week 15, since he came back from injury, leads the NFL in rushing yards. So he's been good. A.J. Dillon, kind of a bruising type of running back. But they'll get it done in the end, 41-24. Grady, make it or break it year for the Cowboys. If they don't get to the NFC title game, this team will implode, to be honest. It's potentially the case. They'll have 2 home games leading up to the NFC title game. They got to get it done. They were my NFC title pick before the season, NFC championship pick before the season. I believe they'll get it done starting with Sunday. They'll beat the Green Bay Packers. And Grady, before I move on to our last game for the weekend, I said coming into the year, this is the Yoda season for the Dallas Cowboys. And what I mean by that is do or do not. There is no try. Horrible Yoda impression. I apologize to the audience. But the point in saying that is Dallas isn't going to be a team that wins a playoff game but then loses a shootout in the divisional round. I said, no, this is in August coming into the season. I said this. Check the tape. I said, Dallas is either going to miss the playoffs or go out in round 1, or they're going to get to the NFC Championship game of the Super Bowl. There's no in between. There is no try, as the great Jedi Master once said in The Empire Strikes Back. Dallas either going to go on a great run or they're going to lose on Sunday. I'll put it that way. I do not believe they're losing on Sunday. Green Bay just has too many holes. And by the way, Green Bay, youngest playoff team since the 1974 Buffalo Bills. The average age of the Packers is 25 years old. 25 years and 214 days old. Is a very young team with a very bright future. That future will not start against the Dallas Cowboys. Dallas wins 41-24. It is now time for Bryson's Bleak Bet. I hate to end with this, but Bryson's Bleak Bet. It's the one game every week that I have absolutely zero confidence in predicting. But hey, you got to predict them all, especially when it's playoff time, man. You got to get them all. It is the best game of Wild Card Weekend, bar none, not even close. Cannot freaking wait for this game. Sunday's going to be fun. My Steelers are playing, and are going to win. My guy Dak's going to play, and he's going to win. And then you got the game of the weekend. The Los Angeles Rams, the Detroit Lions. Lions favored -3 at home. That tells you Vegas is saying, let's go either way. Home team automatically gets 3 points. So neutral site, if they played this game on the moon and they had oxygen, they would be evenly matched. Matthew Stafford, his first game in Detroit. He played the Lions a couple years ago in the Rams Super Bowl year. His first game in Detroit as the Rams quarterback. Obviously, he spent the first 12 years of his career with the Detroit Lions, #1 overall pick back in 2009. For the Rams, similar to the Packers in the sense that they were 3-6. They were looked dead in the water. Looked to be too many holes in the roster. Stafford was hurt. And then what they do is they get very hot down the stretch. They win 7 of their last 8 games. 6 of their last 7 games. I apologize. 6 of their last 7. 7 of their last 8 games. I apologize that the Los Angeles Rams were able to win down the stretch of the season. Listen, this is a team in Detroit. This is a team in Los Angeles with a Pro Bowl guy and Matt Stafford. Only his second Pro Bowl ever, which surprised me. Puka Nacua. If not for C.J. Stroud, Puka Nacua is the runaway offensive rookie of the year. Can we just split the trophy in half and give it to both the way they should have with Dak and Ezekiel Elliott back in 2016? That's what they should do. Half the trophy goes to CJ, half the trophy goes to Puka Nacua. Both of them fantastic. Puka's had the greatest rookie receiving season we've ever seen. Cooper Kupp, a twin, is still effective when healthy. Tyler Higbee, the tight end. You got Kyron Williams, who's had a great season running the football. This defense has a good linebacking core. Solid secondary. Aaron Donald still wreaking havoc. My guy Byron Young, shout out to a VFL, Vol for Life, Byron Young, getting it done for the Tennessee Vols in the years past for the LA Rams. This year, Sean McVay is a top 5 coach in the league. For the Lions, Dan Campbell, Coach of the Year candidate. Ben Johnson, going to be a head coach in 2024. Jared Goff, best season of his career, arguably, at least without the Rams, of course. Jahmyr Gibbs, and Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Jameson Williams, Sam Laporta before he got injured, David Montgomery. I went back and forth on this. This was hard. I'm going to keep it completely honest with you. That's why this segment, folks, is called Bryson's Bleak Bet. Do I pick the team that I think's just a little bit better, that has the better quarterback and coach and defense and comparable weapons? Or do I pick the team that I believed in since last offseason? The team I said coming in would make the NFC title game, which that will be hard to do against Dallas next week, assuming they win, because of the fact that Dallas was my NFC championship pick in general, so kind of a conflict of interest there. What do I do to these Lions fans that have seen me as the one guy in the media that gives them respect? What do I do? It's a hard position to be in. Found myself in the spot with Heat fans last playoffs, and I banded them. I felt bad for that. I've learned my lesson, though, and it could go either way. The line reflects that. Give me the Rams and the points, but the Lions to win outright. And ironically speaking, folks, Detroit wins 31-30 in a shootout. Both defenses will get torched by both offenses, but the Lions down 30-23 will go down to score a touchdown, and old Dan Campbell, the gambling man himself, gambling coach himself, I should say, will go for two, and unlike the debacle against Dallas, they will get it. They will walk off happy, a winner. The Lions fans will get the last laugh. I was just say the last laugh. Stafford is a Super Bowl ring, but the last laugh in terms of the head-to-head against their old quarterback, Matthew Stafford. The Detroit Lions win this game. Bryson's Bleak Bet. It is the... I have never had less confidence in a pick in Wild Card Weekend than this one. Honest to God, I think the Rams are a little bit better than Detroit, just a little bit. Definitely the better quarterback and coach. I'm going to roll with Detroit. They averaged 30 a game at home. Could have been the 2 seed. I'll go with Detroit. I will go with Detroit. Grady in the comments. He says, to be honest, Matt Stafford and Goff worked out for everyone. Can't really say who won it, to be honest. I can say, well, I think Stafford won because he got a Super Bowl ring, and ultimately that's the name of the game. Like, I remember back in 2016, to use a baseball example, when Aroldis Chapman was traded by the New York Yankees to the Chicago Cubs, and Yankees got prospects. Aroldis Chapman, though, won the World Series with the Cubs, and that offseason came back to the Yankees. Well, the Cubs won that trade. Why? They were the ones hoisting the Commissioner's Trophy in October, or November, really. It was early November when they beat Cleveland in that phenomenal Game 7. Now, it's not like the Yankees lost the trade. They got prospects, and they got their guy Chapman back. That, to me, is a similar... Now, Stafford's obviously a way better quarterback than Chapman as a closer, especially in recent years, but that's kind of how I view it, where neither side... Let's put it this way, Grady. Neither side lost. Stafford got his ring. He got his great playoff run. And as for Detroit, they got a franchise guy in Goff. They got a bunch of draft picks. They've hit on virtually all of them. I mean, Jahmyr Gibbs, that would have been the Rams pick. Now, the Rams have Kyren Williams. So, again, both sides, neither side lost, but I think the Rams won because, I mean, what do you play the games for? What did Herman Edwards say? You play to win the game. You play to hoist the Lombardi Trophy. And ultimately, when it was all said and done, that is what the Rams did 2 seasons ago. I'll tell you what, I as a guy who picked Dallas to win the NFC, as a Dak Prescott guy for life, I was overjoyed when the Rams beat the 49ers in that game last week with Carson Wentz starting. Who thought Carson Wentz would actually kind of help Dak a little, given their battles in the past? But because had the Rams lost, it would have been Dallas against LA, and I'm like, ooh, I don't like this. Dallas Green Bay, I like that matchup much better. Let's go look back over the picks real quick, because it's just 5 games. And then I'll predict Philadelphia and Tampa Bay on Monday's show. So, Sunday, I've got the Texans in an upset over the Cleveland Browns, 24-21. Sunday night is my favorite segment. Saturday night is my favorite segment of the week.
Bettin Man.
If I were a betting man, I'm taking the Kansas City Chiefs to cover. 4. Are you kidding me? A cold weather team against the warmest weather team in what might be the coldest game of all time since the 60s. Yeah, Kansas City wins a low-scoring affair, 19-9. I'll tell you this: not only would I, if I were a bet man, take the Chiefs to cover -4, but also take the under in this game. I think it's. Let me check ESPN real quick. I think the last time I checked, it was like 40 and a half. What do we got? What's the over-under? See if we can find it here. The over-under is 43 and a half. Oh my gosh. Yeah, smash the under. Are you kidding me? That's an easy bet. Vegas is giving you money there. But if I were a bet man, take the Chiefs to cover -4 and additionally take this game in the under. For Sunday in my upset of the week, my Steelers are going to go to Buffalo. The weather conditions will favor us, and we'll win 17-16 over the fraudulent contender that is the Buffalo Bills. Dallas will cover and beat the Packers 41-24, and an offensive explosion for Dallas, which they're prone to at home. The Packers themselves prone to giving up offensive explosions. I have no reason to believe that will not continue. And finally, in my Bryson's Bleak bet game, I'm going to close my eyes. I'm going to be loyal to a team that I believed in and go with the Detroit Lions to beat the Los Angeles Rams 31-30 and do so on a Dan Campbell special 2-point conversion. Well, you know what would be funny is if they ran the same play that they ran against the Cowboys, but this time they did report as eligible, which let's be honest, the big reason that play worked illegally, but worked is because they didn't report as eligible, or they did, but they're kind of sneaky with it. I wasn't as outraged as everybody else. Oh, great. See, Grady's a troll, man. He's a troll. If the Cowboys win the Super Bowl, will you become a Cowboys fan again? No, sirree. No, sir. I'm a Dak fan until he retires. And I'll still be a Dak fan even when he does retire. But I will be overjoyed if the Cowboys win the Super Bowl. So my guy Dak can get a ring, and my guy Dak can shut up the naysayers. Shut up the naysayers. Steelers for life, though. I made that clear in July. I'm like, this is it. Like I think every fan, I read an article website kind of research, like, is it okay to switch? It's like, not really, but you get one, and you get one fan switch in your lifetime. This is the one I use. I use mine up. So it's Steelers, and I think this will be a good weekend for me, okay? The Steelers are going to get the upset. That'll make me happy. The Cowboys are going to beat the Packers, so Dak advances, and Cheesehead Ozzie comes in on Monday. So you had a good weekend. I'll tell you what, NFL playoffs are here. Can't wait. Let's go. I do have to watch my Warriors tonight and tomorrow night, so pray for me. We're going to make some deals, though. All right, that is all the time we have for today's show. Appreciate everybody stopping by, as always. Be sure to catch Carving Up Live on Monday at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific time, right here on Twitter, as well as the Carving It Up YouTube channel and the Grid Network YouTube channel. And, of course, be sure to like, share, comment, and take 2 seconds out of your day. Hit that big red subscribe button. It helps the channel grow exponentially. We are nearing 700 subscribers. We're that close. Last I checked, we're at 693, so we're getting closest to the 700 mark. We're trying to get to, big goal I set before the season, because I was at a little under 200 subscribers when I set this goal, to get to 1,000 subscribers by Super Bowl 58, which is February the 11th. So if you have subscribed, thank you so much. I cannot tell you how much I appreciate it. We all appreciate it here at Carving It Up Live. If you have subscribed, tell everybody you know about it. Tell your friends about it, your family about it, your dog about it, cat about it, hamster about it, coworker, boss, your neighbor who won't say hi to you. Tell them to. Tell them about the show. If you have not subscribed, if you're on YouTube, just takes a couple seconds. Big red subscribe button down there. Hit it, and you're part of the Carving It Up family. Just as importantly, be sure to go subscribe to the Grid Network. That is GRYD, the Grid Podcast Network, right here on YouTube, as well as any and everywhere you get your favorite podcasts, right here on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, any and everywhere you get your favorite podcast. Be sure to check out our website too. My man Patrick Brown writing great pieces on the Grid Network website. As far as our audio and video space, check us out on YouTube if you want to see us. If you want to listen to us, get in the car, drive to work, whatever the case may be, check us out anywhere you get your favorite podcast. We really, really appreciate it. It's going to be a fun weekend, man. NFL playoffs. What a week it's been, though. I mean, let's just take a moment to acknowledge, Pete Carroll is no longer the Seahawks coach, and Saban retired 40 minutes before the show on Wednesday. Belichick's not there. Vrabel got fired. Whew. It's the year of the legendary coach. Well, Vrabel's not legendary. He's a great coach, though. But the week of the legendary coach no longer being in their position with their particular program or franchise. Crazy week. It was a fun one, though. Should be an even better one next week, though. Playoff reaction. Let's go. See y'all next Monday, 6 Eastern, 3 Pacific time, Twitter and on YouTube. Please stay safe out there. Please be sure to take care of your physical as well as your mental health. And please, please, please be sure to contact your local state representatives and senators to demand change for gun violence in America. We have got to address this problem ASAP. All right. Playoffs tomorrow, playoffs Sunday, playoffs on Monday, which I'll predict Eagles-Bucks that night at 6 Eastern, 3 Pacific. I'll see y'all then. Stay safe out there. God bless y'all. Peace out. Steelers are winning, you know. Thanks so much for watching the show on YouTube, and be sure to go click that big red subscribe button and check out the other clips and full shows from Carving It Up Live, as well as our other incredible content creators here on the Grid Network.